Rion Frequency, where truth cuts deep, growth hits different, and culture leads the conversation. Hosted by Rion, this is the come up for the culture.
I want to speak about black excellence. The fact that my brown skin feels heaven sent. When the wind blows, I feel the touch of heaven's breath. You brainwash your intelligence is evidence. Evidence we built some pyramids that claim it's aliens. Melanin skin absorbs the light inside you radiant. Elevate your conscience, stuck inside the office. Employee of the month, they won't even put that in your coffin. Let's talk about the profit, the margins of spilled your bonnet. Drinking water from your faucet, just to give you droplets. But you in the club, it's popping. Penny, that's the option. Pictures that you prompted, but forget it cause you locked in. Living in the moment. Ryan said it's token, if you black poor, you broken. Black excellence, when they spill our blood, it's loading. The third eye, the karmic gates is open, but death is better than bondage. Yeah, that's the option. Stay cautious, stay dangerous. You don't need no accolades, nigga, you famous. Stay dangerous.
Stay dangerous. That's my favorite part. Stay dangerous. What's up, world? You are now tapped into the Rion Frequency, and this is where thought meets elevation, and we remember who the fuck we are. I am your host, Rion, and I realized something after episode 1 that I really just kind of jumped into this thing, and I didn't put a few things in place that I realized that I'm going to need. So shout out to Spotify. I need a website and I need an email, and I'm setting up a text line so that everyone can be heard. As it is, the show is in infancy, obviously, but I want to set these channels up now so that once it does grow, I have the ability to just manage it well so that voices can be heard. My goal is to never silence anybody, regardless of if they have opposing views or not, and just not be like, any other platform. Like, we get enough of the shadow banning, we get enough of the silencing, we get enough of the underexposure. So whether you disagree or agree with, points that are made in the show, like, I do want to hear from you. I think that discourse is important, and, debate is, civil debate is also important. The only people that I will not be debating with are those who reject and negate and neglect facts. Like, I don't want it. I mean, I'm more than willing to hear from you, but I'm not going to debate you on anything, because this is not a change my mind type of podcast. Like, that's not what this is. And if you're already thinking like that, then more than likely no one can fucking change your mind. The only person that could change your mind is you. So reaching out, just to argue is futility. Stay tuned and stay locked in with me as I roll those things out. But this is episode 2. Last week we chopped it up about Akil's book, From Niggas to Gods, and the historical relevance of how awakening is really key to rebuilding as a people. So niggas got to remember that even though we embrace the word nigga all the time, we must not fall victim to the stains of the origins. Now, this is not about you reducing your slang. That's not what I'm telling you. It's really about just not being reduced to it. Just remember that, as we embrace each other as my nigga, or your nigga, just remember that we're kings, we're queens, we're gods behind every one of the niggas that's exchanged. So as we get the opportunity, we look back into history to know really just how to move forward. Our greatest leaders were silenced and put down because white supremacy and their idealism knew the power of black unification, and that's why this is so important now. So Malcolm X, Huey Newton, Fred Hampton, you got MLK, they were all silenced. They were all neutralized and put down. But they weren't just leaders, they were frequencies. They vibrated with a truth that threatened the same systems that are designed to keep black people now docile, divided, disconnected. And as we are disconnected to our power, we continue to lose the battle. The Black Panthers were named the greatest internal threat to the security of the United States. And this is going to cause me to go on a tangent. I just a warning you now. But I really need to address something. So I don't want there to be any confusion about the current state of events and my position on these things. So when it comes down to the administration that is carrying out these egregious acts toward the immigrants of this country right now, I don't support you niggas. I don't like you niggas, because I feel like every American right now should be locked, should be loaded, should be ready to go. We said that the Second Amendment was for a tyrannical government. Well, we have a tyrannical government. It's time that we revolt. It's time that we stand the fuck up, because we all know where this shit ends. Black folks have already fucking been there. So if you're not black and you listening to this, I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to the black folks as well, but I'm speaking directly to you right now. I want you to understand that this administration is coming for the immigrants first, and then they're going to be coming for the model minorities, your Asians and Indians. And after they have swept the streets, they will come for the black people. But understand that we will get it the worst. It has always been designed that way. It's almost, and to some degree, the religious folks is gonna say it's prophesized that way. But I'm telling you right now, I believe that we should be revolting. No better time than right the fuck now. The United States is a poor excuse and a poor example of what it means to lead and innovate in the modern world. The Black Panthers were called the greatest internal threat to the security of the United States. And you gotta ask yourself, why the fuck would they be the greatest internal threat? As I said, that white supremacy understood that black unification threatened all of their systems. Now I need just follow me here, okay? Because I need all of this to sink in for just a minute. The greatest internal threat to the United States security was going to be the Black Panthers. That's what they named them. So not foreign enemies, like, let it sink in, like, not foreign enemies, not organized crimes, and definitely not these fucking white supremacists who have been lynching and killing motherfuckers for years, centuries. Not them. They are not the greatest threat. They've been burning down whole communities, and as of 2024, we have platformed them in the motherfucking White House. And I say we as a collective, not we as in black folks, because a lot of us was trying to make sure that didn't happen. But I really need you to take heed to what the fuck I just said. They are now platformed in the White House. They have the global fucking microphone. To some degree, we've had to keep them closeted. They had to keep their ideologies hidden. I'm gonna plug a book that I read recently, and this book pissed me the fuck off as I was reading it. It's a really good book, don't get me wrong. And this is not a book review. This is not even what this episode is about. But I need to get into this first, because I just need to make my position on these types of issues really, really clear. I don't have much of a platform, but the one that I'm creating, I don't want it to be built on any misconceptions about where I stand on certain issues. The book is called The Hate Next Door, and it's actually right behind me, and it's by Matson Browning. And I'm not gonna give the whole book away, but it is about a detective from Mesa, Arizona, who went undercover for over 2 decades, and he infiltrated white supremacy groups, and he was documenting their operations, their members, their organizers, and really just exposing what institutional racism looks like through the lens of law enforcement. So to my point, white supremacists have not been named the greatest fucking threat to the United States, even though they are. They truly are. They are the greatest fucking threat to every single one of us. Not threatened in a sense that you should fucking be scared, but threat in a sense that they hold cards. They hold positions of power, and we have to revolt. We have to stand up. They are platformed in the White House with seemingly unlimited fucking power at this point. You have the bullshit big beautiful bill that just passed. You got them building a $450 million, but it's really not a $450 million facility in the state that I live in. I live in Florida now, and they're building this bullshit ass facility, or they've completed this bullshit ass facility called Alligator Alcatraz. But you could just call it what the fuck it is. It's not no Alligator Alcatraz. It is a concentration camp. It is Auschwitz. I'll stop there. White supremacy is platformed in the White House. These motherfuckers are voluntarily signing up to be these ICE agents. Because, I mean, who else? Who else is doing it? Who else is fucking raising a motherfucking hand to go out into the streets and kidnap brown people? Because for all the fucking criminals that they say that they catching, it's weird because you finding all these criminals at work. You finding all these criminals at court. And not even criminal court. Like, we talking about going to court for their immigration status. That's where they picking them up at. They picking them up at grocery stores, schools. Now, I don't know what kind of motherfucking criminals y'all dealing with, but it don't look nothing like the ones in the White House. It don't look nothing like the ones that sitting in Senate seats in the House of Representatives. It doesn't look like any of those. And I'm talking about both sides of the aisle. I'm not just talking about fucking Republicans. White supremacy knows that black unification is grave danger for the structure. It's the reason why they named the Black Panthers and not white supremacy. Because they understood that black men and women teaching self-defense, community love. You know, the Panthers weren't just niggas in the hood with guns. Like, they just weren't. They were armed with much more than that. Knowledge. They were providing food, health clinics, and health care. They were promoting education, and they were empowering black lives. And they were giving people something that they hadn't had, or they didn't believe that they had, which was dignity. So when you unite around those common causes, you're bound to overthrow that same system. The government was interwoven. I won't even say interwoven, because honestly it's just built. Like, it's in the fabric. It is the fabric. It ain't even in it. It is the fabric of America. White supremacy is the fabric of America. And they understood that feeding black children in unity was a greater revolution than any of the bullets that any of the Panthers could have shot. Honestly, any of us could be shooting. But white supremacy is a fallacy. It just sees what most of us don't. It sees the fucking power that we have. Whether you're black or not listening to this, I need you to understand that the power is in the number. The power is in the people. That's where the true power lies. White supremacy is a fallacy. They have lied to you. So let's be clear about the fact that it's not a fact. It's a lie that America told to justify its violence and in its pursuit of wealth and control. That's what white supremacy is. They made us less human in their narrative so that they could enslave us without all the guilt. The system, as I said, is not broken. Nigga, it is not broken. It is motherfucking blueprinted. It is engineered this way. So from the plantations to the prison, from Jim Crow to the boardrooms to virtually anywhere you walk today, this lie has been adapted and adopted. It's always evolving. It's always justifying for the same fucking goal. If you keep power in the hands of the few by keeping black people in chains, physically, economically, and psychologically, they will continue to always win the game. But the truth is that black history is not like a sidebar of American history. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is the fucking story. Black history is American history. Every inch we've gained in this motherfucking country, we earned it. We earned it in blood, in brilliance, and in boldness. Like, we was willing to step for everything. White supremacy isn't just wrong, and I'm not talking about morally. Like, it's literally insecurity. It just knows that If the house of cards were to fall, that's the truth rising. It understands that if that were to happen, the whole system, the whole shit falls apart. It all fails. If we become unified, listen, like just feel me on this. With unity, we become the architects of black consciousness. Okay, we shift our own narratives and expose all of our truth. We could wake up everybody who's been asleep. You know, not to be outside picketing and protesting, but really to organize, to reclaim, to govern, to build. And this system relies on the disempowerment of black people. And elevation is the greatest threat of all. The energy of Martin Luther King, the energy of Huey Newton, and all of our civil rights leaders, they weren't just people. Like, they were frequencies. They were energies that cannot be destroyed. And the Rion Frequency, that's an echo of that vibration. You know what I mean? This King frequency that we talking about, that's just the echo. This is a continuation of their work, because energy cannot be destroyed. So we gonna remember, of course, the greats, but we're about to amplify that. So today, you know, we gonna talk about breaking cycles. Like, that's what this show is about. I know I went on a few tangents there, but I just needed everyone to understand the severity of what the fuck is going on. Because really, before we can talk money, before we can talk mindset, before we can talk about legacies, before we can really do those things, we have to talk about the systems, both internal and external, that keep us stuck. And it honestly starts at home. Like, if we're being honest, the cycles that we inherited were survival, faith, and honestly, and this is how it correlates to our black experience. So if we start with what's real, survival for black folks in America has never been simple. It's always been complicated. We always manage to exceed the expectation and go beyond what they believe we're capable of doing, because we always manage to maneuver and wiggle through their bullshit constantly. We had to learn how to breathe in spaces that were built to choke us. Just let that sit on your soul for a little bit. We needed to learn how to smile in places that told us we were not even human. You know, 3/5 of a man. We were told to worship in ways that were shaped by the same people who enslaved us. The white supremacy gave niggas an external god in space and told us that our Messiah looks like a long-haired white dude with blue eyes. Just so that you would never associate God with yourself. So you can never see the likeness of yourself in the image of God, because God can't ever look like your black skin. We don't always talk about this. Like, we just don't. Or at least we don't talk about it out loud. But let's talk about Christianity and how it showed up in our story. So for a lot of folks growing up, you know, church wasn't just like a Sunday morning thing. It was like community. It was the structure. You know, it was really the foundation of a black household. Now, I didn't grow up around black folks, but the first time that I was exposed to black family was when I moved to Texas. And during that time, I was required to go to church with my stepdad's parents. It's something that you'll never forget. You know, it was hot as hell, you know, humid. You know, it's like 80 something degrees probably in the pulpit. And you got black men and women shouting and chanting and dancing and singing. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's an experience that you will never forget. But it seemed to be, like, looking back at it, I could see why it's the anchor of a black household is Christianity. But we also got to be honest about the same faith that was introduced, but it wasn't through love. It was through colonization. It was through the plantation. It was through a fucking whip. Slave masters used Christianity to justify our oppression. We're still committing atrocities in the name of Jesus, white Jesus at that. Let me find the words to describe how asinine that is. I'm not telling everybody to go be an atheist tomorrow, but I am asking you to like open your mind and think about this just from a different vantage point. Not be offended by what I'm saying, but just hear me. We were given a God to worship that didn't look like us. Now, I don't know who this nigga is. Like, I really don't. Like, there's been stories of, like Michelangelo's lover. It was just somebody who he was told to paint. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't know who this nigga Jesus is. The white Jesus. I don't know who that is. But in no way am I a reflection of him. And thus the cycle of the negative image, the self-hate begins. They twisted scripture to make ancestors obedient. They said to our ancestors that obedience to them was obedience to God. They told us that freedom was in the afterlife. So pray to white Jesus. And they was busy cashing in on our bondage in this lifetime. You still got preachers promising, Medeas and big mamas and your grannies eternal and everlasting glory, but for a fee, my nigga. So I'm gonna repeat that for all the people that I just offended. They told us that freedom was in the afterlife while they was cashing in on our bondage on this one, and you still got preacher mans up there holding niggas hostage, mind you, promising everybody that eternal life and everlasting glory. You can get it. You can get it for a fee. Nigga, please. I'll take my motherfucking chances. I ain't even trying to meet white Jesus any fucking way. Now just sit with that for a minute, because I know that shit is heavy, and I know probably the delivery was slightly disrespectful for the reason other than like I'm just really just trying to make a point. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody's religion. I'm just really trying to get you to understand that religion is not for niggas. Religion is not for black folks. It's not. Spirituality, abso-fucking-lutely. But organized religion? Hell no. We as a people never really unpacked that. So yeah, we got a lot of people praising in the name of the Lord. This kind of segues into our faith as it relates to survival and just being resistant and resilient. So we as a people have always really been resilient. That divinity shows in how black folks accepted their version of Christianity. So like all things, we flip it, we make it ours. Then the problem is that we are never given credit, or even worse, we sell out. Stop on that one for a minute. We sell out and it's stolen, never to receive proper accolades. And because of this creativity, we find power, in the story of Moses and the Exodus, and we saw ourselves in Jesus, the true Jesus, black Jesus. It was a man who was rejected by society. He was oppressed by an empire and still divine. I mean, I just explained black people, still divine. We turned our faith into resilience. We turned our faith into a resistance. And the spirituals that were sung became the codes for freedom. And the church became like a headquarters for liberation. You got the Underground Railroad and all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement. All of those initiatives were organized in the church. And still to this day, niggas carry faith like it's armor. Like no weapon against me shall prosper. And this as I said, this is really not to disrespect anybody's religion or their religious beliefs. I just want us to think a little bit more critically about praising a white God, and that was given to us by captors, and seemingly what most people would consider an enemy. I'm not saying white folks are the problem. I'm saying white supremacy and white ideologies is the problem. But we reclaimed it for us, and not what it was used for. And honestly, like that's truly the God in us, finding the divine in something that was used for evil. And I know what most people is thinking, like, but Ryan, we're talking cycles. Yeah, we are talking cycles, and that is a cycle of it. At the same time, a lot of us inherited faith, and we were taught to pray, pray through it, but never process it. And now we have a lot of emotionally unintelligent black folks running around because you just prayed, but you didn't process. We were told to suffer in silence. Don't cry about it. And then niggas ask you how you feel. So what are you left to do? Because in most cases, niggas gonna lie. Especially specifically, I'm talking to black men right now. You were taught to suffer in silence. We were told to hide our depression, anxiety, and being overwhelmed behind, oh, God's got it. Yeah. So this one is for the black women. I'm talking to you right now. The God's got it trauma response. We were told to give our money to the church, but we never were taught to invest it ourselves. As a whole, this is really to everyone. We've been psychologically duped into thinking that you could buy first class tickets to glory. First class tickets to go meet Jesus. Invest in this life, my nigga. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Invest in this life. Because honestly, that's not freedom. That's spiritual bypassing at this point. And that's a cycle. And that's why granny house ain't even an asset when it's passed down. You know what I'm saying? Because niggas don't want to understand, or niggas don't understand the importance of, estate planning, trust, setting up trust, and staying away from probate. And we'll get to that in a future episode, because I really feel like, we as black folks, we got to start doing the estate planning. Life insurance is one thing, but even most of us ain't got life insurance. My nigga, we need life insurance for sure. If you want to pass down some generational wealth, and you ain't gonna get it in this life, because we all ain't gonna be Jeff Bezos. You know what I'm saying? So how do you pass down generational wealth? My nigga, get you some life insurance. What Nipsey say?
Open trust accounts, deposit racks, nigga. $1 million life insurance on my flesh, nigga.
A nigga spitting game. And we'll get to that in a future episode. But right now, we gonna be talking about these cycles that we need to be breaking. But we gotta be avoiding probate for sure. We'll talk about that. But if you dodging bill collectors, my nigga, in this life, you might want to consider, trying to pump fake these niggas in death. 2, there's power in money for sure. That's not the only power though. But for real, in all seriousness, there's a lot to be learned. Okay, being skeptical as a people ain't really granted us shit. No motherfucking access. We talking asset protection. But we got other hurdles to conquer first. I'm gonna stick to that. I ain't gonna go too far on other shit. We're gonna stick to that, and we're gonna talk about asset protection later. But just stay with me, because I know this conversation is gonna have a lot of niggas pissed. When we talk about breaking generational patterns, we have to include this one. We have to include that. It is okay to question things. It is okay to seek knowledge. It is okay to deconstruct and rebuild your own faith in such a way that it empowers you. Abso-fucking-lutely. But if that same faith that you've deconstructed, that you've rebuilt, is also what pacifies you, we just need to think again. Because our ancestors, my nigga, they weren't just worshipers. You know what I'm saying? Them niggas was warriors too. And true faith, yeah, that's the kind that's rooted in justice, in love, and in liberation. True faith should never require you to shrink yourself. Ever. That's just a little something, honestly, can sit on your conscience for a minute. Just whenever you're ready, unpack it. Cycles, Ryan. Cycles. Yeah, cycles. So let's talk about self-awareness and emotional healing. Let's talk about what we don't always have the language for in our communities. Self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and this is going to coincide with parenting. A lot of us grew up on that survival parenting. That stay in a child's place shit. Stop crying before I give you something to cry about. We all been there. Like, and honestly, this is not just like a black thing. This is just like, honestly, like a generational thing too. I'm still guilty of some of this shit myself. Like, you know, because this is really not about perfection. This is really about progression. Okay, the first step is becoming cognizant of it and being just aware of the fact that you're acting in said fashion. But what was really happening was trauma parenting. You know, a lack of safety, a lack of space to actually heal. You know, our folks were really just trying to protect us from a world that saw us as threats. So we were raised really to shrink ourselves, you know, to stay quiet but be tough. And even though we was hurting, there was no space for that dialogue. You can't open yourself up to that type of vulnerability. But honestly, we got to do better, because in 2020 they conducted a Pew study. 89% of black parents said that they prepare their children to some degree for racial discrimination. But the question is how many white parents sit there and talk to their white kids about racial discrimination? Very few. So when people say white privilege doesn't exist, you might want to add that to the list. But preparing your kids for the racial discrimination, that's love. But at the same time, it also means that you're bracing your child for the world, opposed to them exploring it. And I personally have to work on like a hybrid approach. I prepare my kids for both the discrimination that they potentially can face and will likely face. I also try to be somewhat of a beacon of hope in encouraging them to really explore the world, because it is a beautiful fucking place. They deserve to know it. They deserve to experience it. I know, especially for my two older boys, that this world is gonna be a motherfucker for them, and at every twist and turn, the structure is gonna try to break them down. According to the American Psychological Association, black children are significantly less likely to receive treatment for depression and anxiety compared to white children, even though the rates of trauma and stress are often higher. And it's not just the kids. I already knew it was coming. Like, well, that's just them kids. Them kids is weak. Them kids, yeah, all right. But it ain't just them, because in a 2022 CDC report, black adults are twice as likely to experience serious psychological distress. You don't think that's happening right now? You don't think the older generation right now is experiencing psychological stress? It's why, you know, like, we got 55-year-old niggas in an identity crisis. One of my favorite people on TikTok is Keita Rose. And I know that there's a lot of controversy around that woman, but you know what I'm saying, I'm never gonna shade a black woman. I fuck with Keita, and one thing she had a take a few days ago, and I just thought it was fucking hilarious what she said, because she was saying that, you know, there's like 50-year-old niggas asking where the hoes at. Like, what's wrong with y'all? So 100%, yeah, like, let's talk about it. Like, you're under some psychological distress. If you're having issues with formulating and creating reality, but systemic mistrust and stigma and the lack of access creates a lot of barriers to the healing that is desperately needed. The mistrust also is understood to be even higher, because even healthcare is racist. So tell that to the motherfuckers is like, oh, well, everything isn't about race. I bet it is. I bet if you dig deep the fuck enough, it is. So I would strongly encourage you to seek help from professionals that look like you. You know, just then that's another reason why we should be highlighting black excellence and exposing it. So shout out to all of the black doctors and mental health professionals, psychologists, and social workers. You are appreciated. Now listen, our parents, our elders, if you will, they truly did the best that they could. I ain't gonna speak for everybody, but I'm gonna say for the most part, all of them just tried to do the best that they could with what they had access to, just what they knew. They just tried their best. Today's episode is not about, like, don't go blaming your dad. You know what I'm saying? Don't go blaming your moms or your granny or your uncles or whatever, unless there's a legitimate reason to do that. But for the most part, like, this is not about passing around blame. It's really about shedding light on where we can make improvements as a future generation. And it's really not about perfection. It's about progression. They were fighting systems. Now, again, this is not to justify, but they were fighting systems of poverty. They were fighting to keep us alive. But now we have access to tools that they didn't have. We have a language for healing. We have therapy. We have books. We have podcasts like this one. You know, we got self-awareness and the ability to pause and ask ourselves questions like, why do I react this way? That's a very emotionally intelligent way to approach and understand our own traumas. You know, like, we get to ask ourselves questions like, you know, like, what wound, like, what causes, what, you know, like, what trauma is this? Am I projecting? Am I passing on, you know, more trauma? Or is this peace? Or we really get to understand emotional intelligence as it correlates to liberation. When we talk about breaking cycles, that's what I mean. Like, we're choosing to talk it out, opposed to yelling, and this requires an immense amount of patience, especially if you got kids. Cause I ain't gonna lie, even still, I'll be ready to knock my kids the fuck out. Even still, to this day. But I also have to remember, you know what I mean? Like, I bring myself to a position, like, when I get there and I'm just like, nigga, I will fuck you up. I also have to remember, like, where that came from. I have to remember that the violence that came from watching, you know, the slave masters come in and beat the fuck out of our men, our women, our children. That's where that came from. So anytime I feel like I need to put hands on my children, I remember that. Now, I'm not condoning the debate of gentle parenting and all of that bullshit, because honestly, I don't know if I believe in that shit. Like, if I'm not gonna tell your motherfucking ass to sit down 15 times in a calm ass voice. Eventually I'm gonna have to put some bass in that motherfucker. But that's really a topic for another day. So next is really gonna be validating feelings and not just behavior. We have a tendency as black folks to say that that's white people shit, and low-key it was hard for me to accept that as not being just white people shit, because when my kids get to acting a fool, like, that nature of a nigga comes out, and I'm ready, but I'm trying to do better, you know what I mean? So I'm not immediately retorting to whooping some ass, you know, slave master, so never no more. I think a huge piece of our healing comes from apologizing. I don't think I've ever heard apologies come from adults. I don't think I get it still, you know what I mean? The generational trauma that I didn't pass down to my kids is that I will apologize. I will acknowledge where I am wrong. This is something that I encourage everyone to do more often. You know what I'm saying? We've been taught to sweep shit underneath the rug and just go back to loving everybody, and honestly, that is detrimental for your mental health, and it leaves room for animosity. I think it stifles growth and development of healthy relationships, and it triggers an unhealthy response on how to cope with those same emotions. So today I'm gonna challenge niggas to learn how to say sorry and actually mean that shit. Like, really apologize and mean what you say. That's a revolutionary act, is really just apologizing. The last thing that I would like really say that we can improve on is not punishing our children for having needs that we were taught to ignore. I think that emotional intelligence in black families specifically is a great form of resistance. This is disruptive in nature, and it builds trust. It allows us to raise whole children. you know, not just the obedient ones. And that's honestly like what our oppressors did to us. They wanted us to be obedient, and we thus wanted our children to be obedient. Obedience was a tool of our oppressor. So I don't just want my children to be obedient. You know, I want it to be built on a mutual respect and understanding. I want there to be a high level of emotional intelligence there. I think that we should be raising a generation of kids that are taught to question and think and challenge things, even if that means at times that they challenge you, obviously in the most respectful manner, but high emotional intelligence that will ultimately give our children the ability to articulate themselves in a manner that can honestly, they can still disagree with you and we can still communicate effectively. We dove into parenting, and I know this is an uncomfortable topic because don't nobody want to be told how to raise their kids, and I know that that's probably the bulk of what I'm gonna get from a lot of people. It's like, well, nigga, who are you to tell me how to raise them? I'm not telling you how to raise your kids. I'm just saying, as a whole, we can do better, and it starts with just building our emotional wealth first. Because honestly, you can't fix money, you can't fix legacy, you can't fix any of these things until you fix the emotional part. Like, I feel like EQ is probably a greater indicator of your overall intelligence than any IQ. You know, like, it doesn't matter how vast your vocabulary is, it doesn't matter how well, you know, you excel in mathematics or science or any of those things. Like, if you have low emotional intelligence, I really can't even deem you to be an intelligent human being, because it means that there's very little progression in your development as a person. I want us to, as a people, to stop allowing pride and ego to ruin partnerships, friendships, and relationships. Understanding that it doesn't repair any type of trust when silence and shame are passed down and still present. We've been told consistently, you know, to keep the family business in the house, but we were never taught to build a house that was strong enough to withstand the weight of that truth. I think family dynamics start with really how we handle our emotions, and that's how we begin to break the cycles, because it comes with the next generation. You know, if you grew up in a household where like finances were a mystery and emotions get punished and vulnerability was seen as a weakness, then I mean, it's more than likely that you weren't really taught how to build, you was just taught how to survive. And it makes sense why so many niggas just out here surviving, not building, not prospering, just surviving. And honestly, in this day and age, like, a lot of us is co-parenting, you know, and honestly, you can't co-parent from like a survival mindset. So I mean, whether you got a blended family or, you know, you still with the mother or father of your kids, it really doesn't matter. Parenting is a partnership at the end of the day, and we have to be accountable to teaching these kids how to build, opposed to just surviving. You really can't build this like generational wealth that everybody is so keen on talking about and pursuing, yet not understanding that they are emotionally bankrupt. So it really does, like, I don't care how much money you pass on, you know what I'm saying? If you're passing on emotionally and morally bankrupt ideologies that grow in the minds of these kids, and ultimately they adopt those ideologies as their own into adulthood, you have built a generational curse. You can't create legacy if your friendships, your relationships are built on fear, pride, secrecy. Those are all traits of white supremacy, just in reverse. Secrecy, pride, and fear. Those are the same characteristics of a system that oppressed us for so long, that and it still tries to retain that power today. I'm not telling you to go run and tell your business to everybody. You shouldn't. I'm simply saying that a lot of what slave masters gave us through trauma is still the way that we operate today. Pride and secrecy, we got to send that shit back. We got to let that shit burn away and burn down like, the Not Away plantation. Our ancestors are literally giving us the signs and the cues. Burn all that shit down and give it back. Return it, from ashes to ashes is what they say. Yeah, burn it down. Emotional intelligence is a foundation. It is not the complete structure. So the effort is to try to formulate the blueprint for a complete structure in the form of these episodes. With that foundation, it allows the fathers to admit their wrongdoings. It allows mothers to seek the help that they need, and it also allows your children to be seen and also be heard. I don't know how many of you can actually say that you was raised by emotionally intelligent parents. Not the insecure, not the narcissistic, not, but really parents that can empathize without criticizing. It's a very difficult feat. We have to rebuild the black mind and return all the bullshit that we learned to white supremacy back to the sender. The black household is a power structure. And for generations, black families were focused on survival, not emotional development. And for good reason. Systemic racism, poverty, institutional violence, it left little room for softness, for vulnerability. I think now is our chance to pivot from that. And I say this often. It's okay to feel what you feel. I gotta tell myself that. I gotta tell my kids that. It's okay to feel what you feel. When your kids get angry and overwhelmed, and help them try to name what it is that they're feeling, their emotion. Are they overwhelmed? Are they, stop telling them to stop crying. I know what a lot of people gonna say, like, nigga, that's white people shit. That's white people shit. Nigga, it's not white people shit though. This is undoing psychological trauma that has been passed down because of white people shit. Like, it's not white people shit, it's because of white people shit. So without knowing the difference in the statement, it might just go over your head, but I mean, it won't take you long to figure out exactly what I meant, particularly when it comes to the kids. Like, you gotta ask yourself, like, are you allowing your kids to have a safe space to feel and be who they are, or are you promoting an environment, a hostile environment, where they have to protect themselves and shield themselves from you? Once you figure out the answer to that question, I think it'll help you decipher what really matters. Emotional intelligence is important, particularly in a world that tries to criminalize black emotions, especially in our children. It's not just growth, it's a relief. It's unshackling yourself from trauma and all of our emotions that are tied to it. Kids learn their emotional intelligence not by what we say. It's truly by how we show up and what we do. And if you learn to apologize when you are wrong, if you are able to talk about your feelings out loud, and express your frustration, and let people know, like, hey, I gotta take a minute before I respond to you, before I say something that I essentially I can't take back, or say something that I don't mean. Let your kids and let others see that you can solve problems calmly, and let your home be the first place that's really safe. So whether that be for your kids or your parents, or like whatever it is, but let it be safe. And you should have regular check-ins, like, with your kids, whether it be just chatting at dinner, or like in the car. Turn off that music for a minute, get some one-on-one time. My kids hate that shit, but I don't care, because it gives me the opportunity to really understand them, and also for them to understand themselves. They don't know that they need it yet, but it's my responsibility to guide them. I can't force no hand, but I could guide them. But if you are if you are speaking to your children and we're talking about breaking cycles, we gotta leave that you're soft, you're sensitive shit in the dust. You gotta allow kids to feel what they feel. And I'm not talking down to the parents who believe that, but there is that intersectionality of homophobia that comes in, and we're gonna address that too. That comes in with the black community as it relates to allowing our children to be vulnerable, allowing them to be sensitive. We should be embracing, the full range of their emotions. That way we can ensure that psychological chain of trauma is broken. We do have to talk about impulsive nature, and the impulsive nature and the taboo of not talking about money is killing us. We have to address the elephant in the room, which is money. We talk about sex. We talk about, we'll be gossiping, you know what I'm saying? We talk about other niggas' business. But money, that's always looked at like it's got to stay locked up in secrecy for some strange reason. And when we do talk about it, you know what I mean, it's always a reactive. We ain't got it. Or stay in a child's place. Mind grown folks' business. Don't worry about that. It really brings me to, like, how can we build on something that we really too ashamed to even talk about? In a home, it is a power structure, and inside of that power structure, you know what I mean, money shouldn't be a mystery. In any structure, a power, money not a mystery. It's a conversation. It's definitely a strategy, and more than anything, it's a skill. It's a skill that we pass down. It's not supposed to be trauma that we hand off, like a baton to our children, to the next generation. That's how we break cycles. So building that legacy, you know what I mean, is honestly sitting down with your kids and explaining them how money works, teaching them about, budgeting, credit, being honest about your finances, being honest about your financial mistakes, and not guilting or shaming. Also taking the ego out of the room, like taking ego out of the conversation, because collaboration can't survive when you suffocate it with your ego. And when you combine the emotional intelligence that we're talking about with breaking these generational curses, and breaking these cycles, and you add financial literacy to that, or raising the future of leaders, so that we don't just have family dynamics, but we also have built a dynamic that is an institution, so that it can continue to thrive. And that is where true power lies. So next week we're gonna continue that conversation. We're gonna be diving into why we're scared to talk about money, and honestly why that's holding us back. And we're gonna talk about credit and estate planning and all of the strategies that's gonna help you build, because our people are plagued by the idea that they could just get rich quick. One more flip and they'll be straight. We're gonna talk about how to break the silence around money, what financial trauma actually looks like, and how we turn more of these conversations into collaborations within your household and in the communities, you know what I mean? Because once we heal in our hearts and we get our pockets straight, you know what I mean, that's really how we raise the crown and step into the frequency. This is the Rion Frequency, and this is the come up for the culture. So till the next time, stay loyal, stay rooted, and keep that frequency high.
This was the Rion Frequency, where the wealth conversation starts with mindset and ends in legacy. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate us 5 stars, drop a review, and help the algorithm find the culture. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. The Come Up is now in session.